Bismillahi walhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. I wanted to talk for a few minutes about the whole issue of mental health, Iman, love, and care. And what I mean by that is that we have to consider mental health a reality. There are conditions that we live under, that we live in, that we suffer in this society, which have caused transformations in us as human beings. And so the idea of how we lived as human beings in a rural society 300 years ago is not the reality of what we live in today's time. The organization of life, the economy, the way that the family is structured, our relationships with one another as friends or as associates, the way that we work, the even the reality of being online, the impact that it has on us, all of that is very real. And so we have to move beyond this phase of denying that mental health doesn't exist. There's no doubt that love is one of the most powerful ways to deal with mental health because many times what is missing in our lives is understanding how to give and receive love. And even sometimes it's about giving ourselves that love which is necessary. And this is not like some corny type talk, whatever. There's a lot of social breakdown, and that's associated with psychological breakdown. The fact that that is not there in many cases, and it contributes, it aggravates the situation, it makes it worse for us. Depression is a reality. Depression is something which is it's a reality of mental health among other realities, and it has levels to it, right? And so sometimes that depression can be as a consequence of a situation that we're going through and we're struggling to deal with it. Sometimes it could be due to a physical condition, being deprived of vitamin D. Sometimes it could be a combination of physical health and the chemical reality that is in our body that affects our mind. And so that's why there's a difference between basics in depression and what is termed as clinical depression. But even when we look at Imam al-Balkhi, rahmatullahi alayhi, in the book Sustenance for the Soul, he talks about this reality of depression and how it exists and how it could be due to a number of different things. And so, yes, the treatment that we see in today's time, which focuses solely on medicine, that's not going to be effective by itself. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have benefit. Some people are at that point where they need to take medicine because their depression is at a level where it's unmanageable, and so they need to be able to be at a point where they feel that they have control. They need to be at a point where they're able to make it to the moment. But there's no doubt that, when we start talking about psychiatry and chemical medicines and so on and so forth, there's no doubt that that by itself is not sufficient. You need love, you need care, and the issue of Iman comes into play. But we can't think that always that just Iman by itself is going to help us make it through. In some situations, that is putting ourselves on a trajectory to suicide or homicide. We're going to end up killing someone or we're going to end up killing ourselves. That's a very real reality. When you look at the consequences of what could happen with a depression that gets out of control or schizophrenia or bipolar or whatever uh, diagnosis a person may have that needs to be managed correctly, when that gets out of hand, it can go in a lot of different ways. We have to be very, very serious about this. This is not an issue of Iman and Kufr. This is the issue of medical treatment associated with Iman and associated with support and a loving community. That's what we have to be focusing on. And some of us, we have that ability to be able to just make it happen, make it work. You know, um, but the reality is that we don't advise anybody to go at it alone when it comes to issues of issue of mental health. I've seen situations in working in mental health and working with psychiatrists and knowing the problems that come along with psychiatry. And I've tried to be that force within that mental health practice. And when I was working directly in mental health, I tried to be that force that is that supportive force that is the support other than medicine, right? But I've seen people get out of control, and I've seen them get out of control to the point where they become homicidal, and we've seen situations where people become suicidal. So we can't do that with mental health. We can't just set it to the side. And yes, there's a lot of practices, a lot of approaches to mental health that are not right. That's why our community needs to focus. That's why, you know, I'm coming on and trying to do this type of live to say that I understand that it's not just an issue of medicine, but we can't write it off and say that it's just an issue of Iman. It's not just an issue of medicine and Iman. A lot of times people are extremely lonely. They're going through a lot of different things. They need human support. And that's why we have emphasized, I think I have like 12 years on Facebook, the necessity to build community, right? And even if it's virtual community, there's people online that they become supportive systems for each other because there's a network that they bring with them. We need to be there for each other. You know what I'm saying? There's no purpose of talking about faith and Quran and Sunnah if the only thing that we're talking about and thinking is that it's just an individual effort. That's fine for you and yourself, but it's not going to get you where you need to go. We need to talk about Quran and the Sunnah as it relates to my relationship with myself, my relationship with Allah, and where we fit at in the community and where the community is at in our lives. And I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm saying. But I'll put it to you in this way: individualism in faith, it doesn't work. If you think that the faith is just about you and your relationship with Allah Ta'ala, and is about you staying on the right path and it's about you doing that by yourself, that is not the whole of Islam. And that word whole can be taken from two angles. It's not a holistic Islam that is dealing with the whole of the human being, and it's not healthy, right? It's not healthy to have that type of mindset. This is one of the reasons why Islam encourages a praying in Jama'ah. This is why Islam encourages the whole issue of greeting each other, so on and so forth. There's effects, there's objectives in that, there's target goals in that type of behavior. It creates a system of support people. It creates a system where people begin to know you, they learn how to deal with you. We have to look at what that means. But just because Western psychiatry has problems doesn't mean that we are justified in throwing out all types of treatment. We have to make the effort and try to find that which is suitable, that which is helpful, that which is beneficial. And us as a community, we have to promote that. What is the right type of treatment? Sure, you're right. Some people that are against some of what goes on in psychiatry and so on and so forth, they are against it because of the history of how this stuff has been used. You're right that there's been problems. But just because there has been problems doesn't mean that we throw out the baby with the bathwater. There has been problems with the invention of the airplane, with the invention of the phone. There's been problems with medicine in general. And you just have to learn, how to make the best out of it. It's work. But we as a community should be there for those that are struggling, trying to figure that stuff out. We shouldn't leave them by themselves or on their own to figure that stuff out. And this is why a lot of times I carry a certain degree of anger with me, because the priorities that we need to have as a community when it comes to the issue of social services, when it comes to the issue of community care and so on and so forth, a lot of us don't have that in mind. It's not the focus. It's not, the direction of our institutions for the most part. And so those of us who are involved, we need to be more vocal that our community does need a certain type of mental health orientation that is not really out there. It has to be one which is empathetic, one which is looking at the human being in love, in a spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood, and not just as a commodity, or not just as you just go take this medicine, you figure it out. We need to have, an Islamic wraparound service where we are checking up on people, that we're offering them support, because obviously the system has failed, and it has failed to such a degree that people don't want to trust in it. And we contribute to that breakdown even further when we just tell people, when we start talking about mental health, but we don't acknowledge the deficiencies in the system. And I know that there's deficiencies in the system, and I don't have to prove to anybody that there's deficiencies in the system, because I have worked in the system. And this is one of the reasons why we have something that's called trauma informed services, because the systems themselves have re traumatized people. They have made it difficult for people. And many times, a lot of people don't like using the medicines that are given because of the side effects, and they feel numbed out. They feel like zombies. And this has a lot to do with bad psychiatry. And we don't say psychology or psychotherapy or therapy, because when we start talking about psychiatry, most of that is just focused on administering medicine. If you have a good psychiatrist, which is hard to come by because there's a shortage of psychiatrists in this country, that psychiatrist is not going to only use medicine, but it's going to use a number of other techniques. And like we said, one of the most effective things that can be an accompaniment, or can accompany um, psychiatric treatment, is love, is spirituality, is care, right? And what I mean by care and love, I'm talking about other people involved, other people that understand where you're coming from and they know how to deal with the situation with you. Community support, recognition, encouragement, as well as Iman and praying to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. But we should not be in a point where we see that we are not doing well, and then we're just saying, well, only if my Iman, I can make this happen with Iman alone. No, that may not be the case. I know brothers that have been clinically depressed and they've had difficult times. One specific told me that I tried to pray and I couldn't pray. And it's not that I didn't want to pray. He was clinically depressed. So when especially when we start talking about depression, it has levels. And some depression will take you out, and some depression is just a matter of you just need to get sunshine. You just need to be around the right activities. You just need to eat right. And then there's other depression, which is that's not going to work. You need more intensive interventions. And so that's just one example among many people, but we have to start empowering ourselves. The least that we can do is be caring and loving towards people. You understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of people that are breaking down and have these situations that they go through, a lot of times they manifest it in a certain way. And we may take them as being rude, or we may take them as being nasty, or we may take them as being a thousand different things which pushes us away. But in reality, underlying that behavior is that there's something else going on, right? And so we, especially in this time period, have to be sensitive to that fact. We have to be sensitive to that fact. And there's a lot to be said on this, but I don't want to continue on. This last piece was more speaking to us as a community, that we have to be supportive of each other. You understand what I'm saying? But we should not negate that mental health exists. We should not negate, as it exists as a problem. and we should not exist. We should not negate that therapy in different forms is works, but that by itself is not enough. It's not enough. It's just like any other medical advice. By itself, it may not be enough. You need environment, you need lifestyle, you need a lot of different things to complement it. But we have to be more sensitive. And when we see people struggling and going through what it is that they're going through, especially online, we should reach out. We should create a community of concern. There was a time, and I'm leaving with this. There was a time where a sister was suicidal, and it was online, and it was I reached out, and I was able to find someone in her community to go to her house, and she was surprised that we were able to do that. And it was another state completely than what I was in. So the online community, using social media, has there's some rules to the game, so to speak. And that's a theme that at the end of the month, hopefully we'll be talking about it. And I'm not here to advertise for that, but is a theme that more and more we need to become conscious of how to use social media. So when we see people online that are literally telling us they're struggling, we have to reach out. It becomes it's almost like a bystander that you see somebody committing suicide and you don't intervene, right? It's very dangerous, and we've had a few cases like that so far. And then even people, mental health is real. Be caring. It's not just an issue of weakness of Iman. It's not just an issue which is going to be resolved with a dua. Um, we need to train ourselves. We need to be more involved in how to intervene. We need to value, what interventions are. We need to know who to call when things go down as far as mental health services, whether it's suicide or who to go to when there's depression or when a person is off their meds. We need to become aware of that. I leave